MLS has long been the top tier of professional soccer in the US, operating as a closed league with no promotion or relegation since its start in 1996. With 30 teams and a franchise model, it's built a strong foundation, but some fans have craved the dynamic stakes of global soccer. Enters USL, which is shaking things up in a big way. As of March 2025, USL owners voted to introduce promotion and relegation across its three tiers, starting with a new Division 1 league in 2028, rivaling Major League Soccer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to MLS Moves. My name is Will. Please make sure you like this video down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that little bell notification so you never miss any of our videos. This historic move creates a pyramid where teams can rise or fall based on performance, a first for US pro sports and soccer. While MLS remains dominant for now, the USL's bold step could refine the landscape, offering fans high stakes, drama, and a shot at the top for every club. I brought on USMNT legend Eric Wynalda to talk about USL's historic approach and see how this will affect MLS in the future. Now, on to the video. Eric, welcome back to the show, my friend. How's it going?
It's going. Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about today, exactly. So let's get into USL. You've recently been talking a lot about this. USL has announced that they are going to adapt promotion and relegation. They're going to have three divisions, and this is something that seemed impossible or likely to never happen in the United States. But here we are. It's going to be implemented very soon. What is your general thoughts on this happening, and were you surprised that they adapted this?
No, I'm not surprised. I think Alec Papadakis and Paul McDonough have been talking about this for some time. If you go back a couple of years ago, there was some reference to it, and it was them just testing the waters to see what kind of a reaction they would get from the general public, which was obviously positive. I do think we need to be patient, though. This is kind of and I'm going to sound very condescending, but you got a lot of people that don't know anything about something that are trying to implement something new. That sounds like a problem. So it's going to take some time for them to figure it out. And obviously, there's a lot of people involved. If we're comparing apples to oranges, which is literally what this is, Major League Soccer to USL, it's just two completely different models. It's one way of doing things. It's a bubble. We call it a single entity, but the truth is it's a franchise business, it has some similarities to USL, but I'll explain why it's different. There's a tap out period, man. It's the 32 teams that probably going to call it quits. That'll be it. Anybody that wants to get in has to buy somebody out, or as we've seen in other sports, they'll just move the franchise to another city. Even though you're seeing some of that kind of thing with the USL, Memphis couldn't lock down a stadium, so that it looks like they're going to be in Santa Barbara now, which is a long way to go. But that's just the way we do things in this country. The idea of a small club starting in Germany, let's call it Wattenscheid. That's actually a club, and they decide that they many years ago that they're going to start their community club, and they're going to go up the ranks, start in the 5th division or whatever division they started in, and eventually end up in Bundesliga football. The idea that they would just say, "Oh, this isn't working here. We're going to move down the street to another city because we can." It's just a better model for us. I mean, we've seen this happen with Columbus. We saw Precourt, fold up his tents and go to Austin because it just made better sense. We just do it that way. It's hard for me to understand how we do that and the impact it has on the people that have, really, associated themselves, and they feel like they are a part of a club, and the club just says in the middle of the night, we're going to go somewhere else. That whole component was the holdup. But now that they've decided that hey, we've built this model that we have, and I'm talking about USL now, that you have, close to over 100 teams that could essentially have a starting point in professional football, it makes perfect sense to create a tiered system that will allow each club to have the opportunity to build their business, to start as a community club, and who knows or how far they can take it. We can get into the criteria necessary to call yourself a first division club, because U.S. Soccer did that a long time ago, which includes seating in metropolitan areas. You actually have to be in the right time zone, or there has to be all three time zones have to be covered in order for you to have a league, which is ridiculous. But there's some tripwire, and now that we've had a vote, and the guys in the USL Championship and USL League One have all, through a supermajority, voted in favor of this, we're kind of in a now what situation, aren't we? Now, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I just hope that Paul McDonough understands all of this stuff, because it is quite an endeavor, but you just can't do it unless you understand it. And I am really struggling to see which people who are in charge of this idea actually know what the hell they're doing.
No, exactly. And one of the things I've been thinking about, obviously, because my expertise is more in Major League Soccer, how this is going to affect them as a league. Because, like you said, single entity system, buy a franchise, sell a franchise, no promotion relegation. But if USL is successful in this new model of promotion relegations, which it seems like there's a lot of people that are excited to see how it's going to work in the United States, I'm just curious how this is going to affect MLS. What kind of pressure is this going to put on them? Because if USL does get some traction, people, like you said, go support the third division USL team, and there's just more. It's more community based, and the fan outreach is better supported. What is this going to do to MLS?
Well, nothing for the time being. I mean, that will stay. Everything will stay the way as is. And to look at it from that perspective of how expensive it is to become a part of Major League Soccer. I mean, San Diego is a great example. I mean, a $500 million buy-in, to be told that we're going to implement promotion relegation tomorrow, and there's a possibility that you could be playing in a lower division against a whole new set of cities that are a little bit harder to get to. I can't. I mean, I don't know how they would explain that to someone like San Diego. I think what will happen over the course of the next 3 to 4 years is you'll see more of a promotion scenario with no relegation. I think that's a fair way to assess which teams and which clubs are going to be able to handle this. I mean, there's some, there's a lot of thought process that goes behind that. The initial idea of tiering the system is going to be the first part. I would assume that anybody that's currently in the championship right now would stay in a first division status, and then the League 1 and 2 would have the ability to be promoted. Now, what they have to do is they got to come up with a number that they think makes sense. How many clubs need to be in that top level? If you look at other leagues in the world, in the 18 to 20 to 24, those kind of scenarios are standard or par for the course. I mean, there's a little bit more teams, obviously, in the championship in England, and there's more games, and it's a little bit more difficult because they're getting into that top echelon or that top tier is extremely difficult. It's the same thing in Germany, but we'll find out a lot in the next couple of years about what this means to people, what this means to certain markets, how these ownership groups address the idea of improving their squads, of the interest levels that are probably going to change their way of marketing their team. But at some point, there will be a push point where, and it can't just be the Lamar Hunt Open Cup. We'll get into that in a second, but where the Louisvilles of the world are going to be like, we want to play against these guys. We want this to be decided on sporting merit. And when things are decided on sporting merit, that's a little different, isn't it? You can't just say, well, they're Division I soccer, which and USL is considered Division II, and so they're not as good. You don't know how good they are until they actually play each other. You know what I mean? You've got to play the game. You have to give them that opportunity, and that is totally flying in the face of everything that we've implemented here in the United States with MLS. MLS is once you're in, you're in. You could suck for 5, 6 years. You're still in, and there's no real pressure or accountability to improve your business. I mean, look what happened in Kansas City yesterday. The sporting Kansas City supporters fired Peter Vermees. Anybody that says it any other way, then you don't know what you're talking about. They write this long letter to the ownership group, and there's only one guy to blame for that, right? And Peter Vermees can say, well, the owners, you really didn't give me any bullets. This was a one-sided fight. I couldn't really fight back. I've been here for a long time, and I maybe familiarity breeded contempt or complacency or whatever it was. This club was under no pressure to actually get their act together. And now that they've lost their coach, the perception is this, oh, we're serious about this. No, no, you're not. You're not. And you'd probably lose right now if you played against Louisville. That's
Probably. No, you would. And, that's an interesting point. Right now, Eric, there are 5 teams in MLS who currently are winless. The reigning defending champions, LA Galaxy, Houston Dynamo, Toronto FC, Montreal, and the 5th team is slipping my mind. Who is it?
Did you already say Toronto?
Yeah, Toronto, Montreal, LA Galaxy, Houston Dynamo, and the 5th team is another Eastern Conference team. They're slipping my mind at the moment. But either way, it was Sporting Kansas City was the other one. That's who it was. I was thinking Sporting Kansas City. But either way, that's unacceptable, right? In MLS, a league that promotes parity, so teams are supposed to be
unacceptable in what sense? It doesn't matter. If there really was the idea that, hey, if we don't get our act together, we're going to be playing second division soccer, I think people get up a little bit earlier. I think guys work a little bit harder to keep their spot. I think guys are fighting to get into that team. I think the soccer gets better. The competition goes through the roof internally within your own club. You know what I mean? That's the part that drives me crazy. I mean, we have created a very entitled means of looking at this. And we shouldn't complain about what mediocrity is. If you want parity and you want to celebrate the idea that, the beauty of this league is that anybody can beat anybody at any time, and then all you got to do is get your act together in September, win a couple games, and you make the playoffs, and that's the success story. Nowhere else in the world is that going to fly, man.
Have you not noticed that? This is a trend, but MLS's season has already started to die down. People have already started to lose interest because of what you just said. What does this part of the season really matter? What does it matter? The only 2 parts that matter is the beginning of the season when there's a little hype because it's been 5 months or 4 months since your team played last, which is also ridiculous, right? And then the playoffs, making the playoffs. That's really the only 2 parts that matter. Now, maybe the summer a little bit because you can sign some big names and get that little bit of a shot of adrenaline to really help you, like you said, down the stretch to make the playoffs. But I mean, man, the season's already, the buzz is completely died. Is anybody really talking about it right now?
Well, I don't, it's really hard to say because we look at things from an American mentality perspective. I mean, that's the way this works. I mean, baseball season just started, right? And my Dodgers have started off great, right? So they're off on a good foot. And the Atlanta Braves, who just actually tried to figure out how they're going to be a better team this year, have lost their first 5 games. Nobody's freaking out. Nobody's freaking out. It's a long season, the only thing that the Atlanta Braves organization will probably do is come up with some promotion to make hot dogs cheaper to get people back in the stadium. But outside of that, I don't think anybody's really concerned about it. It's the same thing in our sport. And if you really talk to marketing people within the MLS structure, they will tell you a couple things. They will say that this sport is so hard to get people to come to games at the part of the season. And then it gets even harder when summer hits. When summer hits, that means one thing. The kids are out of school. And what does that mean? Does that mean that everybody's just, you're assuming everybody just wants to go to a soccer game. MLS figured this out. That's why they created this League Cup thing. They figured out that every single GM was saying, I can't sell tickets in the summertime. There's too many options for these people. And all the stats will show you this, that there's an uptick in our attendances once the kids go back to school. So suddenly a soccer game sounds like a pretty good treat on a Saturday night. It's a pretty good idea. But when you're talking about California in summer and you got a game in the middle of the day, I mean, there's a couple of other things that people like to do, right? I mean, there's the beach, right? It's right there. And some people say, well, we could do that. People go on vacation. People are looking for other options to do something with their kids and to enjoy themselves. And it isn't always a soccer game.
But Eric, I was told by everybody else that, soccer is instilled in our culture for the summer. That's what everybody looks forward to. And I'm with you. I don't see it, man. Who the hell wants to go sweat their ass off in the middle of the summer instead of going to the beach, Disney World, Disneyland, wherever it may be with your kids, amusement park, the regular park? I just don't buy into the summer is where MLS really thrives. Like some people, like you just laid out a great point, because some people believe that summer is when MLS is most fun. I've heard that numerous times when I've debated people about changing the calendar to the Euro calendar. But man, I just think it's BS. I agree with you. Like the summer.
That's a lie. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's what you do when you're in trouble. You lie to people and try to get them to believe that this is actually, no, everybody's coming. I mean, no, they're not. All the numbers would prove that. Actually, I think when we talk about both all of this, when we talk about soccer in this country and our reluctance to do something which would be consistent with the rest of the world, it really is American, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, yeah, my Dodgers, they beat the Yankees in the World Series, and they're calling themselves world champions. They're not world champions. They didn't beat the best team from Japan. They certainly don't want to play the Dominican Republic. They want to get their asses kicked. So there's an arrogance that we say our sport in this country, whether it's the NBA, baseball, or Philadelphia Eagles, are world champions. Yeah, I get it. There's no other place to play football. But I mean, look at basketball. Basketball is being dominated by two fat white European guys. That's what's going on. It's like Jokic and Doncic.
Doncic, yeah,
great, but like I can't imagine that guy trying to play soccer with those big shoes and all that. That would be hilarious. And so it's not really about to anything in our country's mentality of to be a world champion. We just said we're world champions already. The goal for soccer should be to create the mechanisms within our country that create the scenarios that make our players better, that we can become a better a footballing nation that would have the ability at some point to win a World Cup. We don't think that way because we're American. If you think about it from a basketball perspective, if you're already playing in the NBA, you got it. You did it. It's over. There is no international competition. We can all lie to ourselves and say the Olympics is a big deal for basketball. It's not. Everybody else is catching up, and we're kind of trying to dodge that now because the rest of the world is getting better. In our sport, the number one goal and the number one, if we're going to make a pyramid and we're going to say this is the way this works, the foundation to the next levels as they go higher are the sole purpose of all of this is to create an opportunity for us to have the best national team possible. Within our structure right now, we are missing the boat on multiple levels that make it virtually impossible for us to call ourselves a footballing nation. Yeah, people that come to games and wave flags and drink beer and get all excited. What do you happy your team won? Okay, but what did you win? What happened? Look, and the other part of this, as USL tries to kind of change the way they do their business, if you ask them, they'll say we're trying to differentiate ourselves from, we're trying to do something that's going to intrigue people. So we're going to try this thing, promotion and relegation. What's also necessary in a league like MLS, who prides himself on parity, think about their schedule. Not everybody plays everybody. You can't say that you're a champion at the end of it all, right? Within a promotion or relegation model, if you haven't played the same people, everybody has to play a home and away against the same opponent, and that way everything is decided on sporting merit. Right now, I mean, I haven't looked at the schedule. There's a couple of teams that play each other like 3 times, but they don't play anybody at all. What does that sound like? The NFL.
Yeah, but you know what's funny too, Eric, is last year LAFC played the New York Red Bulls for the first time in 5 years.
Right.
Same league. I mean, that's unheard of in soccer. Could you imagine being in the same division for 5 years and not playing the same team?
That at the NFL that'll happen, right?
NFL for sure. Yeah. NFL for sure. Yeah.
There's a bunch of circumstances, and there's like the AFC, NFC, all that stuff, and then everything.
But to be fair, they only have 17 games and we have 34 or 34.
Which makes it fairly remarkable, and it's a great point. But that's
Yeah.
just the way we do things. If it's and which is really strange, because wouldn't you want the big markets to play against each other if that's really
Every
what
year.
this is about?
Every year, man. Every year. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because we've talked about this off camera before, and I want you to elaborate and talk more about it. MLS and Apple TV, because I think this is important too. I feel like USL is just capitalizing at the right time, man. 2026 is around the corner for the World Cup. MLS is kind of, well, they are struggling right now in many, many ways. But Apple TV, tell me about what your thought and what you've heard as far as MLS and Apple TV. Obviously, they're struggling. They're giving away Apple TV. If you make a bet, $5 bet, you get it for free. T-Mobile's giving it to all their customers. I mean, they're handing it out free, anybody and everybody who wants it. So what's going on with that right now?
Well, I mean, the television component of our game is probably the most misunderstood, and most complicated. If you look at other scenarios, and if we're using the EPL as a model, there's an $8 million TV deal that goes along with what all of that means, and all the money that is distributed to all those players. The NFL, for example, they'll get about 255 million each because of the TV deal, the way it's structured, before they even push a button to say, hey, let's get to work. So they've already got some of their bills paid. We've never had that kind of scenario in the United States. Even when the league started, to give everybody a history lesson, MLS was paying ESPN to put their product on TV because nobody knew where this was going to go. And it's all going to be contingent on eyeballs. Now, if I were to show you a 1997 game between the San Jose Clash and the New York Metro Stars, right? Back then, those games were pulling on a network about 150,000 viewers. That hasn't changed in 30 years. In 30 years, the network numbers never went up because of the timing, because of the realities of when the actual real important games that Major League Soccer was playing, in fact, in playoff scenarios, they're up against the NFL, they're up against college football and baseball at its best. No one's watching. No one's watching. So the idea that Apple would come in, put it behind a paywall, and bring in the likes of someone like Messi, and people would automatically say, I want to see that. They never posted their numbers. From what I've been told, their numbers are absolutely dismal. I mean, horrible. And some markets failing to rate. That's pretty bad. That means that less than 1,000 people were tuning into the game. And those are games where obviously Messi wasn't involved. But how about the games where Messi was supposed to be involved? Houston, a couple of weeks back, and all of a sudden, they promoted the hell out of it. They've upgraded everybody's ticket, or at least, put another zero on it, for crying out loud. And well, not a zero, but a couple $100 more, because Messi's coming to town, and he doesn't even play, and no one watches it. So what I'm getting at here, and this is why there is a substantial argument for the likes of promotion or relegation, or making every game matter, is compelling television is what the networks want. And that's why Major League Soccer is crawling back to the networks now and begging to get back on TV. Every single one of those sponsors is very unhappy with the realities of those numbers. There's not what was promised. The 2.5 or the $250 million that was allocated for Apple's coverage of the league on an annual basis, because it was a $2.5 billion deal. I mean, over 65% of that was paid out, I should say, on the production value. So that's getting people on planes, staying in hotels, being in the stadium for the actual event. 20 cameras in each venue. That's not the case anymore. They've cut back substantially. And most of the commentators that you're hearing are no longer in the stadium. They're in a studio somewhere calling it off a monitor. And that's how they're having to save money to make this thing make sense. I'm sorry to out them on this, but I mean this is the way it works sometimes in certain contracts and and it's really contingent on how many sponsors are going to get involved and back the league. But when they dump a bunch of money into something and they say, well, how many eyeballs did we get? And Major League Soccer is saying, we don't really know. And Apple is saying it wasn't good. And then that information gets out, and that the sponsors want to pull the plug and or demand that their commercials are on a network where people are actually watching without the paywall. So this thing is unfortunately not going in the right direction. And I think that the anger that Apple is feeling, and I've even heard it go so far as that they're potentially going to pull the plug on the deal a second that Messi hangs them up. So that could be tomorrow. Who knows? That could be a year from now. But that's not good news.
So that's their saving grace right now is Messi. So they're at least committed until Messi hangs it up.
Well, that's that. Well, I'm sure they're committed until they're not committed anymore. But they're going to find that this is an uphill battle. The number one thing that I think USL has proven in their model and their deal with CBS is that when you look at that. So just try and digest this for a second. And this is what they don't want you to know. Because of Apple, and the deal the way that it existed, and the final that we just had, which was actually, the big markets. I mean, it was a kind of a cool deal. It was the same thing as baseball, to be honest. I mean, you have New York and LA. There's a lot of good things about that. But the USL, I think it was on December 7th, had a final as well. And the two teams that were in the final were not big markets. We're talking about Rhode Island and Colorado Springs. And their game was at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they complained about the window. They said, well, man, we're not going to get any eyeballs, this, that, and the other, up against a big college football game. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? It was closer to 600,000 people watched that game. Now, what does that prove? People actually are more interested than we thought, and it doesn't have to be in a big market. They want to see compelling television. And that Cinderella story, if you will, or small market, cool little, it kind of had a March Madness feel to it, and people gravitated to that. The market, it will respond to actual proof that people are tuning in for the right reasons to watch compelling television and to watch somebody crown a champion. And the numbers for the MLS final, MLS Cup, were half of that. That's a rough reality. And so it's kind of like that moment where the sponsors say, why are we doing this? I thought you said that people are going to watch this. And MLS has done a lot of great work to provide these wonderful stadiums that have all of the aesthetics. I mean, it looks fantastic. But if the product on the field is one, not good enough, and we need to understand that our American supporter groups are starting to grow up, wake up, and realize that, okay, some of these guys don't look like they're even trying at the start of the season. Well, what's that all about? And we have to give the people what they want, and that is the best version of soccer. When I say compelling television, make it worth something, make it mean something. And I think when this is implemented, maybe 3-4 years from now, where we finally see an opportunity for a team who has really come up from maybe a third division scenario, figured their business out, created an unbelievable community awareness, and now they're competing with the big boys. I think people love that. I think that's what they want to see. There's a couple of really cool cities, real cool stories in the United States that I think aren't celebrated enough. I mean, Colorado Springs was a damn good story. I think Pittsburgh is another one. Detroit, who we all know their origins, and to see where they are now, it's really it's really cool to see the sport grow in a very big city and or small city organically with real soccer fans who just want to see their team support their team and have this damn thing decided on sporting merit. The little towns like to say, "Hey, we're better than you, and we're better than you right now." And if anybody says, "Well, that's just stupid," well, that forces the bigger markets and or the teams that are more established to get their act together and to be competitive. That in all, if you take it all and you look at it from the outside, from the 30,000 foot view, what you realize is the soccer starts to get better when everybody feels obligated and or is held accountable when they're not getting it, getting their business right. The soccer just gets better. Right now, it's just stagnated. We've married ourselves to mediocrity. The games don't really particularly matter in Major League Soccer. Some of the performances this past weekend, if you watch the goals, it's really bad. I mean, that's like fourth division stuff. And I think the American audience has finally grown up enough to say, okay, I see it now. That was bad. That we can't call ourselves Major League when our players are doing that, because that was bad.
Well, this is my final question on this. So now this is subject to change. I mean, I'm not going to hold you accountable and say, "Oh, Eric, you said this 2 years ago, man. This is, you can't change your mind now." But with all this going on, with MLS struggling to get viewership, obviously closed system, USL adopting the promotion relegation system, where do you think this ends? Like, what do you in 5 years? Where is MLS? Where is USL at because of these two different paths that they've taken?
Well, I think we'll find out after the World Cup, right? And this is kind of again what I think is so necessary is that Major League Soccer, USL, League One, UPSL, NPSL, everybody, your number one objective or agenda is to make the soccer in this country better, utilizing all the mechanisms that we know work to make things better. What will happen at the World Cup, nobody knows. But the perception of reality will be far more important than the reality in that moment. As 94 gave us a shot in the arm, proved to a bunch of people with a lot of money that, hey, you know what? This thing's real. This soccer thing. And if I'm going to say it this way, and people are going to say, well, that just sounds pretty just it sounds like I'm a conspiracy theorist, but come on. The NFL took one look at soccer after 94 and said, how do we get control of this? How do we prevent this from really affecting our real business, which is the NFL? And that's what happened. So once this World Cup is over, the perception of where we are as a soccer nation will be for the world to see. And if we're still in a spot where we're unable to get out of our group, or we can't if we can't get out of that first round or that first knockout stage, people were just going to say, "Yep, same old, same old." We're never going to be there. I mean, I think Dan Patrick said it once to me. He said, "Soccer is the sport of the future, and always will be." And I took offense to that at the time, but until we get our act together, he might be right.
No, I agree. Eric, I appreciate you for coming on today. We will be interested to see what happens. Tell everybody where they can check your new show, Unleashed, at.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. We're trying to figure out how we're going to get a platform down. I want to thank everybody for the views, man. I mean, getting really up there. A lot of people, again, showing that the American supporters, they want real information. They're tired of being lied to. Sometimes I get myself in trouble for telling the truth. But Unleashed has gotten a really cool reception, and also Sirius XM channel 157. If you're in your car, that's where you'll find me weekdays in between. What would you say on the East Coast? I'm 1 to 4, so what would that be? 4 to 7.
4 to 7. Yeah. Yep. Well, check out Eric on Unleashed and on Sirius XM. Until next time, guys. I'll see you all soon.